Hello and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome for the first time. My name is Dr. Kate Boyd and I am professor of piano at Butler University in Indianapolis. This is my teaching studio. I'm really glad you're here because in December I am practicing my way through the 10 sonatas that Beethoven wrote for violin and piano. Tonight I am practicing the last movement of the very first sonata. Rondo movement, and that opening theme comes back several times throughout the piece. The first thing I want to talk about is finger pedal. In the left hand, we see a note that's actually held, and then the repeated note is going to be short. This technique is called finger pedal, meaning that the finger that holds down this bass note is having the effect of the pedal without actually using the pedal. So even though here it's notated as a dotted quarter note, a lot of times you will see straight eighth notes, but the stylistic expectation at the time was to hold the bottom note and make it a little bit longer. So anyway, we see finger pedal written out here in the left hand. And it creates a lovely continuous effect. The second thing I want to talk about is another stylistic thing that we see a lot in Beethoven, and that is sforzando markings throughout, kind of sprinkled liberally throughout the score. We see one here right away in the second measure and the fourth measure. We see sforzando. People think of a sforzando as being an extremely sharp accent, but I'm here to tell you that a sforzando is very context dependent. This music is very elegant. This sonata and the following two sonatas by Beethoven are clear successors to the last three violin sonatas that Mozart wrote. So there is a transparency and a lightness to the texture. And we cannot just play a sforzando like really harsh the way it might appear in late romantic writing. So we have to take the context into consideration. What the sforzando means in this context, in my opinion, is to emphasize what is normally considered to be a weak beat. This piece is in 6/8, so therefore it is in two big beats. We count it 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. But what happens is the sforzando appears on the second eighth note of the first beat of each of these bars. And so we have it kind of creates a little bit of an off-kilter feel to it. So now I'll demonstrate what I mean by this. The sforzandi in these kind of unusual places, and he continues that with the violin. The next spot I want to show you is the chromatic scale here. I'm going to finger that chromatic scale. So I'm not just doing 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3 the way that a lot of people are taught. There's actually two correct scale fingerings for chromatic scales. I'm going to use the other one, which helps play faster actually, because it's these groupings. So in other words, every time I paused, I was moving my hand to a different hand position. And that's a great way to practice a chromatic scale. See how that worked? I practiced it hand positions. I'm using a little rotation here, right? Because I use rotation to go back and forth between notes that are in opposite directions. It's back and forth. All this is rotation. And then this is wrist circle because it goes around. I'm just going to go on now to show you a little more of the movement. Now here we've got 4-note chords that are broken, that overlap. So what has to happen is I have this in the left hand, and then I have an 8th note rest, and then I have 4/16, 8th note rest, etc. And it's the same in both hands. They're just out of phase with each other. So what has to happen is in the rest, the hand has to move to the new hand position. So it starts off A major, D major, B minor, E major, A major, D major. So I have to move. Watch my left hand. See how I move as soon as I play. Moving right away. And then I move and then I sit over the note. I don't move and play immediately. I'm there early. That happens in both hands. Now I'm going to just check my tempo against where I got to, 88. A little bit of stuff, and then this first theme comes back because it's a rondo. And then we have the whole thing minor. It's a rollicking good time, this piece. Let me show you how the end works. I'm going to start in measure 186. What's significant about this is that we start off in the key of D major, and he does this really cool little modulation, which means he goes to a different key, and he ends up in E flat major. And we're close to the end of the piece, but he goes to a very distantly related key. It's kind of like if you just live in Indianapolis like I do, but then you take a day trip to New Zealand. It's very far. It's like you go there really quickly and then come back, and it feels, you know, like, wow, I am really far from home, right? I'm really coming to an unexpected key area. Now we have to find our way home. I played a wrong note there, so da-da-da-dum, back and forth between the violin and the piano. And then the violin and then the piano have a little bit of a dialogue. The violin goes da da yampa, and then the piano goes pianissimo, and then we're in octaves. And then it's kind of a joke ending. It's like, haha, it turned out we ended up in our home key after all. The takeaways for you are kind of stylistic things that I mentioned. I talked about finger legato, which is in the beginning of this. But even in any classical era sonata, like if you're playing, you can use finger legato on this. Even though it's written as all eighth notes, it would have been normal to hold that instead of just using the pedal. Because of course you're not going to play that's got a lot of too much pedal to it. So that's a way to get the pedal effect without actually pedaling. See, my foot is like nowhere near the pedal. So I'm not using the pedal at all, but I'm able to connect that through finger legato. So when you find, when you're playing a classical era piece that has Alberti bass in it, try to overhold the bass note a little bit, and that is finger pedal. Another takeaway for you is that when you play Beethoven, there are often going to be sforzandi in weird places, and they're often on weak beats, traditionally weak beats, and it's a way to emphasize them, but they don't necessarily need to be super harsh or violent. It just means a pointed, unexpected accent. Another thing we talked about as a takeaway is that there are two kinds of fingerings for chromatic scales, and a lot of times people learn just 1 3 1 1 3 1 3 1 3 1 3, but this is 1 2 3 1 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. And the reason that I'm using that in that spot is because you can play it much faster. I can play it much faster. I mean, maybe other people can play it faster both ways. Another thing we talked about is the importance of playing a chord and then moving to the new hand position in the rest, like in this spot. So you can do that. Like when you have a hand position change, especially if there's a rest and maybe your right hand is doing a bunch of stuff and your left hand has a rest, move early to the new hand position and just sit over what's going to play so that you're used to being there early. Now we're at the point of the video where I give you an update on the day, a kind of behind the scenes. Today is Friday, December 9th. It's quite late at night, actually. It's very, very peaceful here. I'm probably one of the only people in the building right now. We had a holiday party for faculty and staff today, and that was very nice. We also had secondary juries, piano juries, which are final exams, today, and tomorrow we're going to have more piano juries. And speaking of juries, I was called for jury duty next week, so we will see if that interferes with my daily practice and making of videos. Thank you for joining me for my practice session today. I'll be back tomorrow to practice more Beethoven. I'll see you then, and happy practicing. Have a great day.